Thanks everybody for being here. Welcome to the January 20th meeting of CB11 District Needs and Budget Committee. My name is Sage Mason. I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:34 p.m. Tonight we are joined by Khalid Nixon, the staff, or stepping in for Angel Mescaine, our staff liaison. I think it's actually pronounced like Angel Mescaine or something, right? You mentioned that one. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. To raise your hand through Zoom, click the participants icon. You will find the raise hand function there. You should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. The chat should not be used to discuss or post questions about agenda topics. All remarks should be made on the record. Please keep your questions and comments brief and on topic to the discussion. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. We will now take attendance by roll call.
Okay, members, there are 4 committee members in total. 3 are needed for quorum. Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Jessica. David Giordano. Paige Mason.
Hi. Present.
And Janelle Santisi.
Present.
Yeah, quorum.
Great. And thank you, Adam, for being here. Yeah. Let's do, a quorum is present. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time. Do you guys want, there isn't much information on
Oh,
the
okay.
agenda. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Any objections? Cool, let's do it. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from our last meeting were distributed to the committee ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Committee members, any objections? Cool. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the last meeting are adopted. The minutes of tonight's meeting are being taken by me. Announcements. I will just say the mayor's preliminary budget, I believe, is due on February. Oh, you guys probably know better than I do. February 1st?
No,
6th?
February 9th, 17th, the Monday, yeah.
What, that seems different from.
So it's because since it's a new administration, it's often done that they'll do a delay into February to give them more time to, get their situation sorted out and get up the new budget with all the information that the new people come in. So it's like a fairly regular thing on when a new administration.
Okay.
That the prelim will come in February.
Yeah.
And it pushes back a lot of other.
Okay. Well, an extent.
Yeah.
Good. And that probably works well for you as
That
well.
does, yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while and we just didn't know, so I think that's great.
Yeah.
Usually, I think it comes mid-January.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So next year, like that, it'll work.
Okay. Great. And that might push back. We're supposed to have a town hall in February. Okay, so that'll probably happen in March. Okay, so that's pretty much the only announcement. Are you guys ready to present?
Yeah. If we can go to the presentation, should we sit here? Is that
You can sit
better
anywhere.
to maybe like stand here or you can stand there as long as the camera can.
Oh, okay.
I'm writing lots of papers.
Great.
These are business cards of the people that wrote the report. So if you guys want to get in contact with anybody, you can take that. And then these are just for you know, the full board or.
And this is a Dem Bria, he's the chief of CB11M.
Hi, how are you?
Try using this one.
Oh, okay, got it, okay, perfect.
All right.
Hi everyone, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Tanya Guarda, I'm the Chief Outreach and Engagement Officer for the Independent Budget Office, and we're gonna introduce a little bit about what we do, talk about the budget a little bit, and then I'll go over our November plan, but to start us off, go ahead, Mel.
I'm Malik Al-Shamri. I am IBO's press secretary, which is just another way of saying I'm a person that reporters talk to. And I live in this community. Where
Maybe we can talk about it later if you don't want to say it.
Don't too many people are on.
Yeah.
Maybe like 3 views.
I live on anything. I'm not gonna tell you Deb.
If you're on the east side, there aren't that many.
Yeah. I mean, all I'll say is that LC is my counselor. How about that? Okay, IBO. What is IBO? Very important. What is IBO, not who is IBO? IBO is an institution. We've been around for 36, 37 years now. This is kind of our formal definition. We're a nonpartisan agency that provides data-driven policy insights. In a more layman term, IBO is a publicly funded research organization that just teaches people what New York City's budget is and how New York City government functions. Key budget actors. These are all people that play a role in the city's budget. The mayor, the city council, and the city comptroller. The mayor and the city comptroller are the ones that negotiate the budget directly. The city comptroller is the chief financial officer, so he reviews the budget and he's the de facto watchdog of the city's finances. The New York State Financial Control Board was created in 1975 by the state legislature, and that was because of the fiscal crisis that the city had. They used to have control over the city's finances. That is not the case anymore, but they still exist just in case something dire happens and they need to be reactivated. The Independent Budget Office was created following the fiscal crisis, and the role of IBO is to provide independent analysis through community outreach and a bunch of different reports and stuff like that we'll get into momentarily. All right. Our work. What do we do? Legally, there are 3 reports that we have to put out every year. We have to put out the November plan, or an analysis of the November plan, the preliminary plan, and the executive plan. So all that means for the 3 people at home watching is the mayor releases what he thinks the city's economy is going to be in November. IBO is supposed to do their own economic forecasting, look at the city's budget, and say, this is what we think the city's economy is going to look like. We do that also for the preliminary budget. We look at what the mayor's budget proposal is, and we do our own analysis. All of that has to be done independently because the way that the Charter Revision Commission thought of the IBO was to provide that independent analysis separate from the mayoralty, and to give folks who may not agree with the mayoralty or the city council another opportunity to have a credible, independent resource of information. We do a lot of public policy reports throughout the year. So we're not just focused on the budget. I mean, everything is the budget, so maybe we are just focused on the budget, but we look at education, housing, healthcare, city staffing, and a bunch more. In the examples that I gave you, and the reports that I gave you guys, there's 2 series, and there's 2 reports that are part of a broader series where we looked at federal changes that passed recently in July, and then kind of an overview of mental health resources in the city, right? So and the 2 federal series are, one is on the city's public hospital system, and the other is on the city's public housing system. So, the breadth of IBO research is very, very broad. we testify at city council hearings and state hearings, and then we also do presentations like we're doing here, or even to college students or high school students or anyone who may want IBO to be there to present to them. Anything to add, Tana?
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things, and I'll get to it later, that we've been trying, we've been working on is iterating the kinds of presentations we do to explain the budget and trying to rethink how we explain the budget to people, because we have such an umbrella view of it. It can feel a little bit abstract, like the numbers we're talking about are abstract, like $118 billion budget. It's just a really large budget. And then even breaking it down, we look at really big buckets. And so after our presentation, I am really curious if there's any feedback in terms of what we can actually present that's useful for the work that you do as a community board, particularly around how you're going to be looking at the prelim budget and seeing how your needs are met. I know there's also the needs statement, and one of the ways that my team is looking at reiterating the kinds of budget presentations, which is not what we have today, is thinking about service first budget presentations, where we might look at, how like childcare and how, childcare services, we can't through the budget see how childcare is managed in Community Board 11 specifically, but we can look at it like some school district levels and try to like break down how the budget then manifests in the services you see and try to explain the budget that way and see if that works for people, because we're presenting the budget the way we are used to doing it, even internally and with external stakeholders like city council members. But I really want to hear what active community board members and district managers need from us as well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to open the floor to that in terms of like what, the resources that we're providing. It's also like, we're here to provide you the resource that we have currently developed, but that doesn't mean it can't change based on what needs you ask from us.
Tina has made it very clear to the team that feedback, we want feedback.
And then to actually work off that, right? Not just, not just think about it, yeah.
Does anyone have any feedback? Come start real quick.
I like that you guys came here in person. Yes, it wasn't so far for you, but and yeah, I'm curious kind of where this is gonna.
Yeah.
Okay, so the city budget timeline. This is.
Wait, do you have a question?
I did have a question actually. So when you're saying you do the independent research to get to the answers, like what tools do you actually use to get to research?
One thing that I'll say that I think we do is when you're looking at projections, you're making assumptions. And so the comptroller does their projections for both revenue and expense, and OMB does as well. And I think what's helpful to think about is what everybody's intention is in doing that. For OMB, it's ensuring that they deliver a budget that's balanced at the end of the fiscal year, and that because every expense budget has to be balanced. So you'll see this trend where the assumptions they make as to the revenue that they're expecting is conservative, what we call it, right? And then in terms of expenses, there's certain, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later, there's certain areas where they budget a certain amount knowing it's going to cost more, because there's a certain sense that they budget for the full amount. For example, overtime for uniformed agencies, they're what do they call it? Like they're negotiating against themselves, right? Because if you say, well, we're going to spend $1 billion on overtime, and you budget for that, but then you're asking them to only spend $750, and you then did budget. So those are things that I think are in the calculus of like OMB regularly across administrations. And then in terms of, so that's like, so we don't have, we fulfill a different function. So we look at the average of how much various city services have cost and use that money sort of irrespective of maybe the political calculus that we make. And comptroller, again, sort of making different assumptions as to how certain services are how much certain services are going to cost and how much revenue is coming in. So it's like, and in terms of like what, for economic revenue, it's a lot of national and local indicators. I know that we have online our the explanation of our revenue estimates. It's quite technical. I have a version I can leave with you here. I've read through half of it, and it's in terms of the actual technicalities of it, right? And we can totally put you in touch with the head of our I think in terms of expenses, it is looking at past budgets. I don't want to simplify it too much, but it's looking at past budgets and seeing how much things have cost and then projecting that it will cost the same in the future.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I have since we're asking questions, maybe two questions. The first is just my like ignorance about the responsibilities and powers of the Office of the Comptroller. Like, what does Mark Levine actually like? How does he negotiate with the mayor about what the budget can be?
So the comptroller doesn't really have a seat at the table with the budget. The budget is negotiated by the mayor and the city council. The comptroller can do what everybody else does and advocate for certain things within the budget, but the role of the comptroller really is to be the financial, steward of the city's finances. So they're really kind of there overseeing.
Well, the pensions.
Yeah,
right, and the specifics. Yeah, and I think auditing, his ability to audit, kind of is a role to ensure that, I think of budget as like the budget, funds the bureaucracy, which manages the service that transforms into what you see in terms of a government service that you use. And so I think that the comptroller's role is to ensure that the budget's being used effectively, right? And that's what an audit is. It's like, are you using the resources to maximum utility with the minimum amount of waste? I'd say that's like the most concrete role, other than the bully pulpit, which I think is what you do. Yeah.
They are responsible for looking at service delivery, which they have done several times. Your second question?
Second question, you mentioned services and service delivery and like feedback. I do think it would be really helpful. We had a presentation from you guys, and Jessica Elliott, who's on Zoom, will remember this very well, with the sanitation garage, where the independent budget office came and they gave us, and this was maybe 2 years ago,
It was Jordan, I remember.
Yeah, a great presentation on like how much was spent in other sanitation districts compared to all these problems we've had building like what was initially supposed to be like a state-of-the-art thing, but we've so far only gotten like a temporary dual district sanitation garage. And I think the first one was on, actually, was it on 99th Street? There's like a temporary one there?
That's the one by the hospital, right? Metropolitan. Yeah, and now they put it by Potemkin, and then we have 10s on 130 something street. So we have 2 up there now.
Yeah, I just thought that was a great presentation, and it did a great job of like showing us what we were getting compared to other community districts. And I think stuff like that is really helpful. It's hard because it's like the only people who care about like the jurisdictions of like community districts tend to be like very, very local. I feel like you guys are more, you even said earlier, like kind of bird's eye view. But I would just be curious to see like how much service delivery in the city budget goes to CB11 compared to other neighborhoods in Manhattan, other neighborhoods in other boroughs.
Yeah, and we've even brought this up in terms of how we try to organize ourselves, because we have access to a lot of data, and it's the unfortunate fact that some of this data isn't geographically cut. We don't have like geographic markers for house, but we're trying to look into as many areas where we can provide this information, because we hear about this from community boards all the time. It makes sense. You want to see what's going on in your neighborhood, and there's a couple of areas that like you can see that more often. I would say sanitation is one of them. Education to a certain extent, just because you can look at school budgets administratively. Or essentially administrated programs are probably harder to see at a local level, but education is definitely another area where we try to provide as local information as we can. It's usually by school districts, which don't fit, like super neatly inside a community board, but that's certainly another area that we can help with. And I will say another presentation we offer is to parents or any other education interested party on how to read school budgets, because those are not always the easiest things to read. I think the DOE has recently released something trying to be a little bit better about it, connecting the school allocation memos to what you see in your school budget, but that's definitely something else that if you ever want a presentation, we could do. And the other thing I'll say is with CB11, I think that was a request from your community board, and however we can empower community boards and committees to ask us for a question is something I'm interested in hearing about too. You know, like, because I think that sometimes we get questions, and the worst is if you just hear no. We do try to provide why, but there's also a way in which if you just tell us something you're interested in, we can at least present like a option of what we can look into, and then it's up to you whether that's helpful or not. But it's always depending on the kind of data we have access to, and sometimes it's not even access; it's like what data is actually collected on a particular interest, issue of interest. Yeah.
And to add to something that Tina said, let's say you have a service based in Community Board 11. The people that may use that service may not always be from Community Board 11, so it's hard to kind of then say this is just in Community Board 11, therefore this is how many people in Community Board 11 are using the service. So it's to get to, as Tina was saying, it's really hard to get that granular sometimes. So, any other questions?
Actually, on that point though, I think it would be quite interesting to know the services that exist in Community Board 11 that are not used by residents of Community Board 11 as well.
Yeah, that'd be really hard because.
Yeah. I know, but
Yeah.
like if you're figuring out how to do it like that, I think that would be something that would be extremely.
Yeah, I feel like really I think again the one place that I could see that being possible might be schools.
Yeah.
Because we have anonymized student level data for DOE schools, charter schools, unless I don't want to speak incorrectly, but charter schools.
I mean, unless if you have a service where people check a box that they're in Community Board 11, maybe you give that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So the city budget timeline. Normally, the preliminary budget is released in late January, very early February. This year, because of a new mayoral administration, the city council passed legislation to push back the deadline into February. So it'll be February 17th when the mayor's preliminary budget is expected. I believe your preliminary budget adjustment recommendations are due on the 1st of March. You probably need that. That's for the people at home. The state budget is due on March 30th. And the reason we moved the state budget here is because the way to think of budgets on the governmental level is they all flow from one another. So what the federal government does impacts what the state does, and what the state does impacts what the city does. And that is why the final budget for the state is due on March 30th, and that coincides with the city's executive budget, which will be released in May. That is really when you would start to see state allocations to the city fully or more accurately reflected in the budget. And then you go through the whole budget dance. New York City's adopted budget is due on June 30th, and the fiscal year starts on July 1st. And then the federal budget is due on October 1st. Whether that has happened, I'm not sure in recent memory.
They're still continuing.
Yeah, very often the federal budget had not actually, I think, met that deadline. And more recently, last year, New York State budget did not meet the March 30th deadline either. And then the first quarter plan, so the November plan, is due in November, and then the cycle restarts again. This happens every single year, and the way that I like people to kind of think about this is each step is meant to build off of each other and better inform the budget process. And like the preliminary budget comes out in February. The fiscal year ends in June, so there's a lot of time between February and June, and there's a lot of time, at least in the city's view, from February to May. So when you're in February, the amount of money that the city may potentially spend is a lot more. When you're in May, you only have about 2 months left of spending, so you kind of have a better sense of what the city is going to be spending, and by the time you get to the adopted budget, you can make a budget that is reflective of the entire year. Anything to add to that?
So sorry, just because it's delayed now, does that mean all of those dates are going to push to March 1st and then?
No, just so there'll be less time between prelim and sec.
Which also means that the budget hearings at the city council level are either, if they get pushed back, they will to answer your question, the question you're really asking, yes, there will be a crunch timeline. And I'm going to pass it on to Hannah.
Going to talk about the last analysis we did, which is reviewing the November plan, which I think of as kind of the progress report for how the city's expenses are coming along and how the revenue is coming along to see if we're going to, to make sure that we're going to reach a balanced budget for the current fiscal year. And I would say that in that, what we highlight in our analysis of the November plan are risks to the New York City budget, and these are part of that series that Matt was talking about called Federal Changes, Local Impacts, of seeing how federal changes in the funding for both states and the city are shifting a lot of costs and administrative burden to the city, which is, something that is being implemented like a little bit on a timeline. So we're not going to see that in even prelim, but we're going to start seeing the effects of that. So it's something just to keep in mind, especially since the November plan has, forecasts for years beyond 2026. And for now, I'd say the key takeaway that we have from our November plan is that the budget is tight, and it's one of the first times that we've identified a deficit for the current fiscal year. We generally have not identified a deficit. There's usually been a surplus that we can see through savings through headcount when there's less people employed than was budgeted for at the city level. That's like savings that end up being something we can use to prepay bills even, and we're not seeing that in this current plan. And we're also still looking ahead at like what to look for in the state budget, because prelim comes out before the state budget, but the state budget we expect will have some notion of how they're going to deal with federal cuts that go to the state but then come to the city. But the state determines how much of that comes to the city. So that's like it's going to be, we sort of expect some amount of difference between prelim and exec this go around. And something else I just want to identify is one of the things that we want to do is hold webinars on the prelim plan, and those we're less likely to be able to do one-on-one, like coming here, like we in person, and wanting to do more like a webinar that a lot of people can come to. So I hope we can be in touch in terms of like when a good time is, like to, we never know if it's during the day or in the like in the evening. We can accommodate either, but we wanted like to do this as a preview of like a more intense presentation on prelim, which will be the first time we see the new administration's budget and start hearing more about potential federal changes and state changes that will affect prelim going into exec.
Quick question on the projected deficit in the November plan.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, are there?
So its current year deficit, we're estimating at 380 million. And one of the things that we point out is that the city has usually ended the year with a surplus, which we either put into reserves once that was approved, or prepaid bills essentially for the next year. But that surplus has been shrinking year over year since fiscal year 2022. And so now we're estimating that there's no surplus to draw from, and there will be a $380 million gap if there isn't some control in spending, given the estimates we have for spending, which in some cases are above what the administration was planning for in the November plan. Does that make sense?
If I can add really quickly, the 380 million is less worrisome than in 2027. Like 380 million, keep in mind the city budget is $118 billion, so it's 0.5% of revenue. And as Tina said, you can see fluctuations in staffing, and maybe see that dwindle or something like that. The big issue, or the bigger issue, is the deficits in the years beyond, because as Tina said, the spending of the surplus.
I'm just, I know you guys are the independent budget office. Do you take into account what you anticipate the priorities of the incoming administration is and potential costs?
No, we do go by plan, by the plan in front of us. So this is specifically over the November plan. So this wasn't taking into account the Mamdani's priorities in terms of childcare, transportation, and housing. So yeah, not in this plan, but that's what we would be seeing in prelim, right? Because then they'll by February 17th, they should technically have whatever new programming, whatever they're expecting there was a new announcement on childcare, so we know we're going to get some state money for that, like how much they're projecting that's going to cost the city, like all of that will be represented in prelim, plus the need to, by prelim, have a plan for ending fiscal year 2027, the next one at no deficit.
And those three things are the main drivers behind the deficit?
They are some of the larger ones. So it's frequent flyer in here on this topic is the uniformed OT. That, like I was saying, OMB tends to under budget for that. So we're saying that we predict that they're going to need $678 million more if the trends of the past hold true. And we do say in our report that there have been some, under the new commissioner, some tightening of overtime, so like some decrease in overtime costs, but not quite, even with that decrease and taking that trend into account, we still expect $678 million to be added. And all that feeds into that deficit number, right? So if it went $380 million less, then we'd find that number. But I mean, that's overly simple. And then in other areas, like cash assistance, city perhaps, and homeless shelters or other areas where the amount budgeted doesn't reflect the amount we spent in the past. And I have, those numbers on hand if you'd like. But then, and in education, we have the state class size mandate. We're predicting that we're going to need to hire between now and 2028, which is when we have to be 100% compliance. And let me know if you don't know what the state class size mandates are. We're going to have to hire an additional 7,000 teachers above what has already been budgeted. I mean, OMB has been budgeting for an increase in teachers to meet the class size mandates, but based on a study that we did, a report on recently in the last month, we think they're going to need a lot more. And there's also, the due process case costs where parents go to a private school to get the special education that the DOE can't provide. Those costs are always an area that we predict are under budgeted in November plan. And also there's still a need to backfill federal money that had been funding summarizing and learning to work programs. Good question. And then going back to those risks in the New York City budget, we identified, and again, they're on the federal changes local impact series, areas where the federal, the feds basically fund city services directly. And so that's what those 6%, 13%, and 59% numbers are. And we're just identifying them because federal policy has been so erratic that we just identified as areas that could be vulnerable to changes in federal funding. In some cases, there are changes coming down the pike, and some there aren't. But part of what we wanted to do is to show people what services are funded through federal money. And then the last thing we were looking at is that the Adams administration budgeted $19.6 billion in state federal funding as part of the November plan. We won't know until the state budget come out if that's actually the amount that we're going to receive, because the state's going to be thinking how they're going to handle federal cuts that reduce the revenue they expect from that source. So those are sort of the last risks that we're talking about and that we're going to be looking at both in prelim, but this might not all be seen in prelim because the state budget won't be out yet, but we'll definitely expect to see reflected in the executive budget. Anything to add?
And I guess I had never looked into what the budget of HPD was, but it's less than I thought.
So the thing with HPD is that a lot of it is capital funding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So with housing, you'll usually see on the expense side not the biggest amount because it's usually like the building is capital funding. So that's why. Yeah, that's why that's like a pretty common. Yeah.
I think the 59% on the left side is Section 8, so like Section 9. So like and I think in one of the reports you'll find that information.
Yeah, because if they were to cut. I mean, it was really, I believe, the president's budget that was talking about cutting Section 8 after 5 years, which would really reduce the budget to HPD. And so just coming up, like I was mentioning, prelim is coming up, and we want to do a big push to provide people the information they need for prelim. After prelim, I realize that you guys, provide the response pre-prelim, right?
After prelim.
After prelim. But so like, however we can, I don't know, like, I don't know if we have the same timeline, but I wanted us to present at least what we're going to be seeing in prelim and what we're looking at. And again, answer that question of like what IBO reports and presentations would you like to see? Here's just examples of things we have. We have a budget resource that breaks down the New York City budget in $100 to try to make some of those large numbers make more sense. We have the Federal Changes Local Impact Series, the progress in first years towards class size mandates. So that's where we're getting the numbers that I was talking about in terms of complying with the state class size mandate. We looked at the city bike contract to provide lessons of how the city might want to rethink its contract when it comes up for renewal in a couple of years. And we also looked at adult protective services, which is signifies a trend we've been seeing where the city's has been able to hire people to provide the services that people expect, but they've had a harder time keeping people. And so some of those trends we talk about in that adult protective services. So I think it's an interesting report that even if you don't necessarily have experience with that particular service, it talks about a headcount trend that we're seeing across the board of just the city being unable to keep a lot of people retiring, so a lot of institutional knowledge being lost, and then newer people not staying longer to get that institutional knowledge because the pay can often be challenging. And then cooling centers, was looking at the cooling center program that is a volunteer program that the New York City runs. And then another example of a recent report was looking at the expansion of the Right to Counsel program that has, I think, a little bit more of a different issue, not quite headcount, but more contract management is how I would describe that. Yeah, those are contracted services, so those aren't city employees. Yeah. Yeah, so my question, I guess, for you guys is how we can help, particularly around, or if there are research questions that you've thought of, or like other things. I can't promise that we can help in all ways, but just always willing to hear, like, when it comes to budget information, what do you feel like is a missing gap, I guess?
So I guess one thing that comes to mind initially is if there was a way that we could more tangibly see, like, these deficits will lead to more trash on the street. Just like notes about like how we will be directly impacted by changes in the budget. I think it'd also be, so that's one. And then maybe also like a geographic like tie to that, where like they're gonna take more money from our neighborhood than another neighborhood. I know you're probably not gonna have access to that, but
yeah, but it's an interesting question of at least like how are like local services. Because something I think would be interesting is sometimes we go to 311 data for this, but I think there's some caveats. We have the 311 data, like how have you seen increase in the complaints over trash, pickup or noise complaints that aren't answered. Like, I don't know, those are sort of pass out ones, but yeah, like there is some amount of that would be helpful to know that when you see a tangible service reduction, to let us know about it. To see, do you know what I mean? To then drive like, oh, what are maybe areas in the bureaucracy, in the funded bureaucracy that we can see that reflected. Because it's, and maybe, I suppose the MMR is supposed to sort of track service delivery, but I don't know that has super geographic granularity. Yeah.
The MMR, or is
The
that
mayor's management. And if I can add, I tell people it's really important to, when you're looking at a budget, I always give this example. Think of, let's say I budget $100 for groceries. For the last 6 months, I've been spending $80 for groceries, and I'm getting all my groceries. So I decide that I'm gonna cut my budget by $20 and spend it on something else. Immediately, you're like, oh my god, I cut my budget. You aren't getting the things. You're going hungry. No, I'm getting my groceries still. My groceries cost $80. I wish. And I reallocated some of the funding that I wasn't using to something else, right? So the point there that I'm trying to illustrate is when you're looking at service delivery, it's really important to not just look at the amount that is budgeted and how that is changing, because it could be like as Tina talked about earlier, the city could be over budgeting for something and reducing that funding and allocating to somewhere else without impacting service delivery. And sometimes the city could be funding something just enough, but the way that they are going about it is what is driving, the issues in service delivery. And no matter how much money you put, if you don't fix those issues, you're not.
Or if you don't have people working those positions, right? It's interesting. But that's where having some of the on the ground data would be helpful to know that these vacancies are maybe hitting this particular community board more than we've been hearing elsewhere. And there is currently no real mechanism for that. But certainly would be good to hear about. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do, even with community outreach, is to hear about those. To know that you can always contact us, and I can't promise, that we would be able to see it, but it gives us a data point of even being able to look into a service, because the way that we pick our issues is usually we keep our ear to the ground in terms of what's relevant in, the news media, I guess, currently, but also talking to council members, talking to advocacy groups, and just at some points we'll come up with our own research topic, but we also do accept requests, as I was saying, like the Community Board 11 looking into the sanitation garages was a request.
And to Tana's point, the Adult Protective Services Program report that we did that's on display there, that report came out because of a city council hearing and the reporting of a journalist. Our analysts saw that and were like, oh, this is something we should look at, and we did. So that's Tina has reiterated several times, feedback, give us info. We want information.
But I hear you about and like I said, I think it'd be interesting if you'd be open to it when we sort of do our first iteration of what we're calling these service delivery budget presentations, and maybe we can skip the budget presentation if you already know about it, but looking at how a specific service, as granular as we can get it, what it looks like in your neighborhood.
Well, I would say I think it's very helpful, even if maybe we know a little bit more than other board members and maybe the general public about the budget process. I think it's very helpful just to drill into.
Okay, because I never know how much people know, and I don't want to talk.
A lot of people don't want to say how much they know.
But I don't want to assume that you don't. There's always that tricky part where I don't want to assume people don't know. But I'm certainly happy to we talk about this all day, every day. So sorry, did you have a question?
So two things. I think one, I'm just gonna be honest. Maybe people find this the most interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
But it's probably one of the most important things for the board. So there's got to be a way to kind of break through that, and there's got to be a way to present in a sense this is where you have the most kind of say as a board, making an impact. So you might think, that committee you're on that you want to see that park fixed or whatever, talking about that, but that's not maybe going to get it done as much as this discussion. And I think one of the things I could be way off. I haven't come to too many of these, but when we do our budget requests as a board, oftentimes, Sage has taken over recently, and Jessica did a very good job, but a lot of times the committees, when they submit them, from my experience, they'll ask for the same thing. They're not asking the right way. They're not putting the right requests in, and they're just getting kicked back to us. And I'm wondering if maybe that's something else that you could help with, how we word it, or is that even worth asking for? Are we asking the right agency? I've seen a lot of examples of that where we get told no 3 times in a row, and then it's they're not even the ones you asked for them. So I think it would be helpful that we really have the ability to, when we submit our final product, we're asking for the right things in the right places that have the best chance. We might really want something, but you're you're not really going to get that. Ask for this, you need it too, and you can get it. So I just think that would be helpful too.
Yeah, and I wonder if it would be worth a working we might not know how something works potentially better than you do. You know, like it's not going to be in every area, you know, but like a DOT request, for example. Like I know that Emily on our team has a pretty granular knowledge of the DOT. So, you know, looking at the requests that you have of theirs to see what is a bit more pie in the sky. You know, what do you ask for a study first to like, you know what I mean? Like, because you're asking for this and there's actually these 5 steps and they're not going to tell you that because they
don't want to.
I don't want to necessarily talk bad about a fellow agency, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that it just makes it easier to, in a busy schedule, to say like, okay, no, right? When it's a little bit too far.
They're going to give you the information. They're just going to say no, go figure it out.
Yeah, because I've seen, Sinray on our team has been looking at needs statements and some of the, I think there was a working group that looked at them and saw some of the responses from agencies and trying to see how often this agency says no or says, you know, there's all these different responses.
Generic,
They give another,
yeah.
basically different types of no, right?
Yeah.
Like,
We're
yeah.
involved.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I'm just thinking about what you're saying about the statement. Can we use some of the research you guys do to add in the stats? Because like we're
100%.
we're like Googling research and things, but if you guys have something that is
Well, and that's where you can use if you. I mean, we've revamped our website, and we're going to revamp the Ask Us webpage again. But there is a section in our website that hopefully is easy to get to, where you can just email us a question. But you also have our emails. You can email us directly, and within a week, we can usually turn around a fairly simple stat if it's doable. And you can quote it. You know, when we give it, it's meant to be quoted. It's, you know, we stand behind the number. Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I mean, if you pay your taxes, you've kind of already paid for it, so, you know. Probably funded.
And do you have like on your website a repository of all of these presentations? Someone could just go click in and find if they want.
We have as Tanya said, we revamped our website. It's very nice. And it's broken up by secretary, so you can go and look and find it. And if you can't find it.
And if you can't find it, let us know. Yeah, because we do have a lot of, we have probably about 1,000 reports on there. We try to make them more searchable. But if there's something that a particular issue you're looking into, just don't, there is someone on the other end of the line when you email us, is all I'll say. You know, like even if you use the form on the website, like it's someone from my team who responds to those. And we'll usually like quickly say like, we received your email and try to turn them around in about a week.
How many people work at?
About 48, I think. Yeah. We're almost at 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did use some of your stats, but only stuff that like you brought to us, not stuff that we really sought out.
Yeah, I think the seeking it, like I realize it puts the burden on you all, but you know, even with the needs statement, like I like, it's hard for me to like give you the information ahead of time, but I totally understand the struggle because I've seen them in the needs statements and the responses that you get, and like I don't know that we have the capacity to go through, for example, a whole needs statement to give our own assessment of like why it may or may not work, but maybe we do. I mean, maybe we can at least do one as an example.
There's some
pick
tips,
a community
you
board
know,
that I
you're
have.
getting the same answer, you know, like these generic answers, like
Yeah.
just some kind of guidance on something, you know.
Yeah, because that is the function that, you know, when we were created in 1989, that we were meant to provide, is to provide sort of an independent source of knowledge for community boards. Yeah, specifically.
Yeah, I think it'd also just be really interesting to see. I don't know if you guys can do this, but maybe a suggested study. Looking at everybody's like budget requests over time and which ones have been approved, which ones haven't, and what it took, like what changed in order for a certain request to be approved.
Yeah.
If it was like a
It's hard because I feel like sometimes it's almost Sinray's been looking a little bit into this, and it seems like when it happens, it's a happy coincidence where requests, you know, came through a plan that was already in place. Things, you know, so but maybe that's also, you know, I'd like to think that there is sort of a better path with better information to get community boards needs assessments looked at more seriously. Yeah, because, and I think that sometimes when they've been the same over time, and I've seen, you know, every community board's different, that, you know, I I understand the apathy, but the apathy breeds more apathy. You know, like it's a struggle. I can sense the struggle.
I mean, I live in this community board, so I will.
There you go, exactly.
I'm happy with how I heard it. If you would like, feel free to send me my card. Feel free to send me like 10 of the things that you.
Well, they're probably online, right? Like I don't know if the new ones.
You think they can hear about?
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of context, and I'll talk to some people.
Be awesome.
And, happy to. I mean, it'll be a good test for us. Actually.
I think it'd be a good test, and I feel like it also could be something where we take that learning elsewhere, right? Like I do think it's probably a high time we did.
This meeting has given me an idea that we can.
Yeah.
How many of these like specific, like you show up to a community board committee meeting have you guys done so far?
As an agency, or
I know, not like you guys, the two of you.
I've done 4 or 5, but I don't do them as much as my team does.
I don't do them as much.
I feel like my team has been doing. There's 2 people that are really dedicated to community board, like that is their job, and they do maybe a couple. I would say 3 or 4 a month. But it's been, and they were hired about a year ago. So we got a new director in 2023 whose mission was to get IBO out there, and so I was promoted to start, to pretty much restart a department to do community outreach. And so it's been in those couple of years that we're trying to go and be proactive, but now we have people asking us, which is really great. So we're hoping to kind of snowball that into more being able to be invited, but also go out. But I'm also thinking as like the head of the department, how that also we don't have the capacity. There's a team of 2 dedicated community boards. We don't have the capacity to go to like every 59 community board meeting and especially the committee meetings. So I'm also thinking about how to provide webinars and resources in ways that people can come to us. Like I understand most people are volunteer, right? But yeah, just conserve our, just manage our resources efficiently. But for now, we're trying to do as much one-on-one outreach, and I love coming in person, so I'm not yet. Yeah.
Do you guys have more? Are you?
No, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So I will say, if we go to the end, I do recommend you follow our socials. Our team really does a hard, we do a lot of work and put a lot of effort into creating a social media feed that if you are a government dork, that you will appreciate. Because we really, we do posts on our reports. We're getting into doing budget basic bites. So yeah, and then we try to make them funny and engaging because we realize budgets, as soon as you say budget, most people kind of close their eyes. But yeah, we do try to make it as funny and cute and social media friendly as possible. So I'm pretty proud of our social media.
And if you have any questions, really, reach out.
Yeah.
It's kind of why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 2. I'm surprised I didn't know anybody who's already following you guys.
Oh, really? That's great. Good news.
We penetrated New York City.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and I hope you keep in touch with us. Yeah.
I will expect one of your emails.
Yeah.
And I think the solution to the capacity thing is just getting somebody to be like the liaison essentially to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, and I'll say in the future it might be Hannah who comes and speaks to you. I know she's sort of like we're spread out like borough. She's Manhattan, Bronx, and Staten Island. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on in the agenda. Presentation on a revised budget request submission tool. So I'll share my screen for this. Is that okay? Yeah. I don't know why you were like, oh. I didn't pull up. Usually I have like all this. You can see it? Cool. So I looked at all of the, and let me go to the worksheet. So I incorporated all the feedback that was collected here about what we should do. with the first iteration of this tracker. Good night, guys. Thank you. And so I did things like adding a button that allows you to like forward a request to another committee, and that committee automatically gets an email that's like, this committee wants your input, put it in the comments section. Did that. One thing, I also edited the email that gets sent out so that it explains that like first month you spend reviewing it, next month you spend voting on it, taking action on it. Organizing submission, providing. Okay, so there's also a new tab now where if you select that you're from an organization, it asks for more information and it invites you, like, are you able to present? You can, we would prefer you come in person, but you can also present via Zoom. Added a link to some budget materials in the opening paragraph. Jose's suggestion was really great, which was just to first allow people to explain what they have to say, because it's just like complicated and overwhelming. You just look at like 30 options for different like expense and capital request types, because you're like, what, like you don't even know how to find what you're looking for there. So first it's explain, and that's required, and then it's also required to select one of the options, but you can select like, I don't know, and that's fine. And then the committee will figure it out for you. There is like a timestamp thing, but I didn't put that in the emails just because I think people will like get an email that says like this email came in at this time. And the information about when any request was submitted will be also just be on this like when the request came in thing. Change instruction, did that. Submitters, yep. Didn't do that. Put an email when request comes in, and that was what I just said. So now the form looks like this: Sage Mason Gmail. If I was from an organization, I click there, it would bring me to this next page, name of organization. I'll just member. Impetus, I wanted a better word, but I couldn't think of one so quickly. Test, not gonna go. Presenting, cool, link, CB11M. Next. And then it asks you for your category, healthcare, human service, or I'll do do you still chair any committees? No? Okay. I'll do housing just for fun. Needs for housing. Here's where you explain, build more housing. This is like the intimidating part where you're like, what do I do? None of the above, not sure, submit. And then everybody will have just gotten an email. It'll take a second. Well, when it comes, it'll look kind of like this. Well, no, that's the committee to committee forward. It'll look like this. It'll populate this stuff. When it's an organization, it will now include the details about the organization. Then you go to the budget request worksheet. You'll see your new request here. And then if you want to forward it to a committee, you can click forward to committee, district needs. And now district needs and budget email just, I would have gotten it. It'll say somebody just requested that you review the following proposed budget request. This is it. You say at your next meeting in the comments section here, we like this. Then the other committee will go back to this at some point and then say accept.
What happens if you reject?
Reject, it's supposed to, I wasn't sure if I want to delete it. This isn't working right now because I already had a request here earlier and they have a thing where you can't click accept more than once. Reject, I didn't know if I wanted to make it like disappear forever, or if I just want to keep it so that at the end you just have all the like rejected requests listed. Do you have thoughts on that?
I would keep it because if you start getting a feed of the same ones, then we can frame it in a way to make an actual request. Or if it keeps getting rejected, it's going to the wrong committee. We also have like a, like a audit of it. Audits of it.
I like that. Let's see if that works. Cool. Yeah. Oh, but the issue is that I didn't. I have to have said at some point capital request, or I've changed this to something more specific because it doesn't know where to send it yet. But then you accept it, and then it'll go here if it's a capital request, here if it's an expense request, and then we'll have all of our stuff lined up. Yeah, and there's a little like arrow here that tells you like when it was forwarded to the other committee, if it was forwarded to another committee. I thought David would like that. He was just the only person that like brought up the cross committee thing. Yeah, so I think this is like pretty much ready to go. There are some like bugs that I am probably unaware of that I'll try and figure out. But I think this can, like, whenever we get our requests in, we can start populating this here and make this available to people to input new requests.
And this sheet that it goes into, who has access to it? Just the chairs, not the vice chairs?
Everybody, actually, I'm not sure. I can change it whenever. I think anybody with the link has access to it. And anybody with the link, but there's a difference between so the public facing thing will just be this form, which doesn't allow people to access the spreadsheet. And it's kind of hard for somebody to get to the spreadsheet unless they have like gotten an email. It's like, here's the spreadsheet, or they go into our drive or something. And then people can't edit this except for a handful.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say like
You can
there should be
password
some,
lock it.
yeah, there should be some control around it if everyone gets it.
You can't use that. Try it.
Yeah, well, nobody can edit this part,
Right.
but I think anybody who has the link right now could go in and click like accept or reject it.
Really?
But I can change that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just board members that could get in there right now. Yeah.
I don't think it's that, but
Yeah, I'm not there.
I just haven't put that much thought into it.
I'm like, if you haven't discussed it in your committee though, then maybe you shouldn't be just accepted.
It's fair point, yeah.
I don't know, I feel like there should be some like control around it.
On the accepting it.
Yeah. Or rejecting it, like what if somebody rejects something and someone else has an idea about it?
Maybe there's a way to just give that access to the committee chairs. Because it went to their committee kind of thing.
I can do that.
I mean, I wouldn't stress too much, but I think it's light years better than whatever we've had. So when we put it up, it's gonna go on the website, right? The form for people to fill out from the community. And we're gonna put that one there, like, community resources, how are we gonna?
I asked Angel to put it in
Yeah, I just wanna know where you want it.
CB11M. So right now, you go to CB11 website, they have this thing that says budget request tracker here.
Yeah, yeah. So
I haven't really used that. I'm sure it's useful, but this brings you to like an old Airtable chart. And
Yeah.
I don't really know how to interpret this personally. I could figure it out, but
I make the argument, I mean, I can talk to him, so this should be a little bit more prominent, because it's actual place for people to really come on the website and give feedback. Things.
yeah, I think it would be good to have it here above the budget request tracker thing. I think it'd also be good for like contact us. Also, submit a budget request.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Something that like they almost can see without having to click on anything to make them aware.
Yeah.
I think that wouldn't be overstated.
But cool, that's the status on that. I was procrastinating doing it, and then I was like, I had this meeting. I gotta get it done.
pulled an all-nighter.
Yeah, but these are the emails that came in. It just takes a little while. So this is my request was forwarded to another committee, and this is like, I got a new request type. It says unmapped because I selected like, I don't know, and so it doesn't know which committee to send it to.
Right.
This was fun, and it is fun. We'll continue. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Should make a QR code on the wall when members come in. You've got to put at least one request in each meeting.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good idea too. Any opportunity for people to.
I mean, you're doing all this. The point is to get more input, right?
Yeah, I do anticipate that like this isn't gonna take off. It's gonna be like probably like a slow burn. We'll probably require a couple times like talking to committee chairs, reminding them to do this. But I do think it will be useful if there's like more buy-in and if people get used to it.
Make you like I was thinking like even if they're gonna keep doing housing walkthroughs, you go into nitrogen stuff at bulletin boards, you stick a QR code up. You never know who might scan these things and put something in. Just start to inform you. What did we say? What does that mean? There were like 33 surveys filled out last year for the Blood District.
It was 33. It was a lot more.
It was?
Yeah.
Why was somebody saying 33?
I don't know.
Up until a certain point.
Oh, up until a certain.
Yeah, we had like about 30 somebody responses.
Oh, and then it went up a lot.
And then we went up after, yeah.
So how many? Do we know?
I would say at least 100.
And what's like?
I think it was definitely over.
And what's
Yeah.
typical? Like if you know, like average.
Oh, man.
Is that like average? Is that more than average?
That was definitely average.
That was under average.
I think my tenure, I've seen 200 responses.
I just feel like there's a goal and we have something in our heads.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's as best as you can, expand participation. I also think of the context that you have the population in this district, right? It's like 110,000 at least, and your max received responses is 100.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's also.
It depends on the context, it depends on the outreach and the level of engagement.
Well, I think that's the outreach and engagement. And if you're gonna put all your time into doing something like this, you can't force people to use it. You gotta make sure they know about it.
I do think this tool is like more user friendly than like that survey. It takes forever to fill
No,
out.
I agree.
Like every time I've done it, I'm like, I don't want to finish it, and I think a lot of people don't. Like the
If you get 100
responses, like
hundreds of requests in here, I think, I'm not comparing the two. I think it'd be great. Whatever gets more input and feedback, however. People feel like they really got a specific request like this, like that's what I want to ask for. I don't have to answer all these things that might not be interesting.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this.
Yeah.
But
We should
it's,
keep plugging it in every board meeting and how the public is reminded. Every meeting, you have something, just put it in.
I'm an executive.
yeah, I think yeah, great suggestion. Yes, will do. We'll try hard to sell this thing. Cool. Moving on to the agenda, unfinished business, none that I'm aware of. New business, cool. Roll call.
Jessica Eller?
Hey, y'all present. Also, great job.
Thank you, Jessica. David Giordano is absent. Sage Mason?
Present.
Janelle Satija?
Present.
Thank you.
Cool. We, I think, can be adjourned. Oh, wait, let me, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:43.
Excellent. Everybody have a good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.